Hey everybody, good morning, welcome back. I am going to be doing something a little bit different today, and I'm going to be doing another double feature of decks, but this time I'm going to be showing off decks that need some work. These are decks that I am working on playtesting, and I am trying to reach out here to see if anybody seeing this video has any ideas for how to optimize these decks. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to get these running fairly smoothly, but they are a little bit unconventional decks. The theme between both of them is that we are going to be using Exhume in them. So the first deck up here is going to be an update to the Reanimator archetype. So I was playing around with Reanimator and trying to see if I was able to run Rise Again as well as Exhumes to get some extra reanimation spells, potentially powered up by Dark Ritual. I'm not sure if that's where we want to be. We could always do the Teach by Example in this list and maybe double Exhume. That could be something spicy, but I am including 4 Serpentine Curves in this deck because I was thinking, this deck is pretty soft to graveyard hate, but Serpentine Curve does not care if the instants and sorceries are in exile or if they're in our graveyard. So if our opponent is going to be exiling our graveyard, we are still going to be able to Serpentine Curve for a large creature, in addition to the main reanimation strategy. So I'm not totally sure if this archetype is even really going to be able to function competitively, but I think that Serpentine Curve does add something interesting to this deck. So I wanted to get it out there. I wanted to get people's opinions. Maybe some other people might be interested and want to playtest this deck and get back with me. I would love to get some feedback on this. So primarily we are trying to reanimate Crusher. We can do this as early as turn 2 and potentially even with haste, thanks to Dragon Breath. So we are running 8 cards that let you draw 2 and then discard 2. We've got the 4 Careful Studies, we've got the 4 Faithless Lootings. This is a 3-colored deck, so we are running Manamorphose and we're running some Thriving Bluffs to help hit our colors. Manamorphose also effectively reduces the size of our deck by a little bit and is a free way to buff up the Serpentine Curve once it hits our graveyard. We are running 2 Dark Rituals to just help with our mana. This is going to allow us to do more things on turn 2, on turn 3, potentially on turn 2 if we need to both play an Exhume and something to get something in our graveyard first. Dark Ritual can help enable that. It can also help us cast Rise Agains, and in a pinch it can help us cast hard cast Striped River Winders and Ulamog's Crushers, although we're typically not going to be getting that late if we haven't either won or lost the game. So we have 3 Insolent Neonates. This is going to be another way to get cards into our graveyard to bring back, and this is going to provide just a little bit of insurance against some edict effects, so that they aren't just simply able to edict away our Crusher before we're able to attack with it. We are running also 4 Striped River Winders. We are going to be able to get this back with both Exhume and Rise Again. So it's a 5/5 hexproof. It's probably not quite as powerful as it was before Groff was running around the format, because it does trade with the Groff, but the hexproof on it, sometimes you can just turn 1, cycle this, turn 2, Exhume, and against certain decks, that's going to be enough. But we are still trying to piece together other things, like getting Serpentine Curves out. We have the Gurmag Angler here, so that we can exile cards from our graveyard. We are going to be bringing some more Gurmag Anglers in Game 2, most likely, because Gurmag Angler is a little bit better at utilizing the graveyard than something like Exhume is, because as long as it's our main step and we have priority, we are able to delve away cards before our opponent is able to activate a relic or something like that. So they're going to have to proactively use their relics to keep us off of Gurmag Angler instead of reactively. So we do have 2 more in the sideboard to help out a little bit. The Dragon's Breath here is a card that if you can get it into your graveyard, all of our creatures, except for the Serpentine Curve and the Neonates, are going to be able to have this come back from the graveyard and to enchant the creature. So it's going to give our River Winders, our Crushers, and our Gurmag Anglers haste, and that can be a way to win Game 1 potentially very easily. We can potentially get back a Hasty Crusher on turn 2 or turn 3, and oftentimes that's just good enough. So I'm running 2 Cathartic Unions, even more draw and discard. This is going to help power up the Serpentine Curves. It's going to help the consistency with getting things in the graveyard and getting back crushers. And then I've got 3 preordains here to help kind of just filter things around. At first, blue was a very light color in this deck. It was mostly red-black, but now it really needs all of these colors, and it needs them early. So we are running 4 Thriving Bluffs here. We've got some Ash Barrens, and then Bounce Lands for black-red and blue-red. So I am not confident that this deck is going to be competitive in its current state. It is a little bit fragile. It is a little bit janky. Well, let's be real. It's really janky. So if anybody has any ideas on this deck, I would love to hear them. I'm not going to touch on the sideboard right now. Just have some cards over here that I thought would help shore up some of our matchups. But we are super soft to Graveyard Hate, and we are a little bit less of a dedicated Reanimator deck than one that is completely focused on getting that turn 2 or turn 3 Hasty Ulamog's Crusher, although we are still able to do that. So the next list up is a deck that I have been working on for a while, also with the 4 Exhumes in it, and this one is really spicy, y'all. So this is going to be a treat here to show you my little pet deck here. It does need some additional work because, much like the previous one, it's a little bit janky. It is probably not optimized, and I am going to need some more playtesting. I'm going to need some feedback to come up with the optimal list here. So this one here, we are running Exhume as well, 4 of them, to get things back from our graveyard. We do have 2 Crushers in this list, so we can Exhume a Crusher, although that is not going to be the main thing that we're doing. That's why there's only 2 in here. Cards that are really spicy in here that I'm running are, we've got 3 Tortured Existence to help get back cards to recycle, to help get, maybe we want to get our Augur of Skulls back. This Augur of Skulls is a very interesting card in this list because we are running 4 Undying Evils. So this is a card that doesn't really see play in Pauper, and it's a very interesting card in what it allows us to do in this deck, because if we have Augur of Skulls on the battlefield, we can place a stop on our upkeep to sacrifice the Augur of Skulls, which can only be sacrificed during our upkeep. And if we give it Undying, what we can do is we can sacrifice it, it will come back with Undying, and then we can sacrifice it again. So one of the more explosive plays of this deck is to go turn 2 Augur of Skulls, and then on turn 3 Undying Evil it, make our opponent discard 4 cards. So keeping with the theme of Undying and 4 cards, another cool thing that we can do with Undying Evil is we're running 4 Muldrifters. So if we evoke this for 3 mana and cast an Undying Evil on it, and we could even order the triggers so that the sacrifice, we put that on the stack first so that we draw the cards, and then if we draw into an Undying Evil, we can potentially cast that on the Muldrifter, even if we didn't have it in our hand when we first cast the Muldrifter. So that is not only going to allow us to get 2 triggers off of the Muldrifter, as it evokes, gets sacrificed, and comes back with Undying, puts another trigger on the stack. So we are going to get to draw 4 cards, and also it is going to become a 3/3 flyer, which is pretty important because now all of a sudden, rather than being a 2/2 that gets stonewalled by core Skyfishers, that gets stonewalled by other 2-power flyers, bird tokens, and all sorts of stuff are going to be able to trade with it. When you make it a 3/3, it is definitely more resilient. So we are running 3 Stinkweed Imps here. We have some cards to draw and discard in Careful Study and Hapless Researcher. Those are going to allow us to get these in our graveyard, and a lot of times we're going to be dredging things into our graveyard to try and exhume them or to try and bounce them back to our hands so that we can replay them. So the reason that I'm running the 4 Hapless Researchers in here is because it works pretty well with Tortured Existence and with the Reanimation plan. So in order to activate Tortured Existence, like let's say we have a Stinkweed Imp in our hand that we want to discard, we do need to have a creature in the graveyard first before we're able to activate the Tortured Existence. So by having the Hapless Researcher and our cycling creatures, we are going to be able to get more creatures into our graveyard to utilize the Tortured Existence aspect of this deck here. As far as the cyclers, we have 1 Whore of the Broken Lands. This card is quite interesting with Tortured Existence because As long as you have this on the battlefield and Tortured Existence on the battlefield, and a creature in your hand and a creature in your graveyard, you can pay 1 black mana to give it +2/+1 until end of turn, because that's what it costs to activate the Tortured Existence. So we could potentially get this back in the late game, make it really, really big, and close out games with that. We have 1 Windcaller Aven. We can cycle it away, give something flying. We can give our Ulamog's Crushers flying. We can give the giant Horror of the Broken Lands flying. We can give our River Winders flying, even our Gurmag Anglers. So one of this card here, we can cycle it away, and then potentially we can get it back from our graveyard with the Tortured Existence to give something flying to close out games. We've got 4 of the Striped River Winders again in this deck, because this is a fine thing to exhume, and it is a fine late game card if we make it that far. 1 Crypt Rats in the main deck. This is a good utility card that we can pull back from our graveyard. With the Tortured Existence, we can destroy a lot of creatures. If we are dredging, we are going to have a lot of creatures in our graveyard, and maybe we can turn over one of our utility creatures like our Crypt Rats and just get it back to our hand, kind of like a little toolbox. So this is the deck here. It's pretty spicy. It is probably not tuned to be competitive in the meta here, but I would definitely love some feedback on this one. We've got a lot of really spicy, really janky things that we can do, which I'm a big fan of. So even if it's not competitive, it's definitely a lot of fun. Just touching on the lands over here, we have islands and swamps, a little bit more swamps than islands, because we are going to want to have black mana up for our Tortured Existence and a lot of our black cards, but we do want to hit blue pretty early so we can be casting our Careful Studies and Hapless Researchers. So we have 3 Dimir Aqueducts, we have 4 Dismal Backwaters, and then some islands. So the mana base probably needs some work. The rest of the deck needs work. You can see that the sideboard over here is not completely full, because I am still trying to figure out what the matchups look like, what our optimal lines of play look like versus certain decks. So wanted to share this with you guys to get some of the spicy jank out there and maybe start brewing up some new archetypes in the format. So hopefully this gets somebody's gears turning. I have been having fun coming up with these lists here, and I hope to hear from you in the comments. I'll see you in the next video.